I'm Joel, your guide in Israel, and welcome to part 2 of the tour of Masada. The northern palace here at Masada is one of King Herod's most lavish palace fortresses, and was built on the hilltop in the classic style of Roman imperial architecture. Archaeologists Ehud Netzer and Gideon Förster noted the striking differences between the northern and western palaces built by King Herod here at Masada. The western palace that we'll visit later on was built using a combination of Middle Eastern and Greek architectural elements, whereas the northern palace here, built around 10 years later on, bears the stamp of Rome, showing strong similarity to the palatial edifices built for Augustus and Marcus Agrippa. We currently find ourselves here on the upper of the 3 levels of the palace. The upper level had a large semicircular balcony and several rooms with black and white mosaic floors. The model shows us 2 further levels of the palace, which we'll see and speak about shortly. Before us is the large viewing balcony, and either side of us are 4 large bedrooms. It appears that these rooms were the king's private quarters, and that the upper terrace was mainly used as a residence. All of the palace rooms were originally decorated with frescoes, and they had mosaic floors covered with black and white mosaics with geometric shapes. The semicircular balcony gave dramatic views down towards the Dead Sea. The third and lowest of the 3 tiers is probably the best kept part of Masada. It's difficult to see from here, but I'll take you down there a little later on. The middle terrace comprises 2 sections, the round structure or tholos, as well as 5 rectangular niches. These architectural elements suggest that this level may have had a religious or cultic purpose. Jumping forward to over 70 years after Herod's death and the time of the Roman siege on the Jewish rebels here at Masada, across from us now we can see Roman Camp F, the largest of the 8 Roman camps around Masada. Notice below the army camp part of the remains of the siege wall. It's likely that in this camp was the headquarters of Flavius Silva, the Roman siege commander here at Masada. We can see here with our own eyes that the valley on the western side of Masada is less steep than the drop to the Dead Sea to the east. Naturally, therefore, it's on the western side that the Romans built their ramp in order to bring the siege tower to the top of the mountain. In front of us now to the north, and beneath the lower terrace of Herod's northern palace, we can see yet another army camp. As our gaze shifts from north to south around Masada, we can see once more below us the remains of the Roman siege wall, 4 kilometers or 2.5 miles long, completely surrounding Masada, and as much as 2 meters or 6 feet wide and 3 meters or 10 feet tall. The wall's construction would have been an ominous sign for the rebels at Masada. Next to it we can see a path that connected between the Roman army camps. This path, the running path, was used by messengers to take messages between the camps. From here we'll start to move out of the northern palace. As we make our way, we'll have another opportunity to look at the incredible views from the top of the palace. In the far north as we look, at the bottom of the ridge that descends down to the Dead Sea, is En Gedi. En Gedi, which literally translates as the spring of the baby goat, is the closest freshwater source to Masada. Along with the hard work of building army camps and walls, and constructing a siege ramp, the Roman soldiers also needed to contend with the harsh conditions of the desert. They also, likely with the help of Jewish slaves that they'd captured during the revolt, would need to make the trek of 19 kilometers or 12 miles on a regular basis all the way to En Gedi just to bring fresh water. In the meantime, the rebels on top had plentiful supplies of water. Where from? We'll speak about that later on, but nonetheless, this imposition put on the Roman soldiers below likely made them only more angry with the rebels on the top of the mountain. Turning back the clock once more, nearly 100 years, to the period of opulence under King Herod, we're now entering into the bathhouse complex. As we can see in the model before us, the bathhouse had 3 main rooms: the frigidarium or cold room, the tepidarium or warm room, and the caldarium, the hot room. Outside was the courtyard or palestra where we're located now, and alongside it the apoditerium or dressing room. It would be possible to exercise here in the palestra, the external courtyard. The palestra was the place to stretch and exercise before entering into the bathhouse. Notice the palestra's mosaic floor, as well as the drainage hole that can be found in the right-hand corner before us. This was useful for clearing up any waters or oils that were left behind. And adjacent to the palestra was a small pool, which was important since it would be rather undignified to enter dirty into the bathhouse. As we head into the bathhouse, the first room that we'll take a look at is the apoditerium. The apoditerium was a little like the locker room of your local gym. Here, visitors to the bathhouse would undress, leave their things, and perhaps meet with others before continuing their experience. The walls of the apoditerium were plastered and covered with beautiful frescoes. The benches that we see around the outside of the room were added later on, perhaps by the Romans or by the Jewish rebels who arrived here in 66 CE. On the floor beneath us, we can see the remains of triangular floor tiles tessellated one with the other, and it's understood that such decorated flooring was also part of the renovations of the Second Temple in Jerusalem that were undertaken by King Herod. Like the benches that we spoke about earlier, this crude bath was also added later on, either by the Romans or by the rebels later on. Imagining ourselves as Roman visitors to the bathhouse, now that we've got undressed, we can make our way into the tepidarium, the warm room. Just next to the tepidarium is a plunge pool, a cold bath. You can imagine yourself walking into the tepidarium in preparation for the hot room experience before moving back through the tepidarium and jumping into the plunge pool. Tss! The shifting temperatures getting the blood flowing around your body. Here as before, we see the imprints of where the triangular opus sectile tiles were laid, as well as the beautiful frescoes upon the walls. And we've now made our way into the caldarium, the hot room. The question is, how did it work? We can see that both the roof and the walls of the caldarium were plastered in order to ensure that as much heat as possible would remain inside the room. But how was the room heated? As we look down to the floor, the answer begins to reveal itself. Notice that the floor that we're standing on is raised up on columns, and so beneath our feet is an open space. The heat can then move and circulate between the columns under the floor. But what was it that was circulating? There are Roman bathhouses, even in Israel, that use hot natural springs as a source of heat, but that's not the case here at Masada. Here, it's actually hot air that is circulating beneath the floor, a system called hypocaust. Some of the hot air was able to enter directly into the caldarium through the tubuli, or pipes, like those that we see in front of us. And here in front of us now, we can see an opening in the wall. This enabled the air that was being heated by the furnace outside to enter between the layers into the caldarium. The roof of the caldarium was curved. In that way, water droplets condensation, rather than dropping directly on the heads of those inside, would roll down the walls. At the far end was a small bath that visitors could take water from to pour upon themselves, perhaps also creating an element of a steam room experience. Heading outside and around the side of the bathhouse, we can see the location of the furnace that was used to heat the air that passed beneath the floor of the caldarium, the hot room. Here against the eastern wall of the bathhouse, we can see where the furnace that heated the bathhouse was located. King Herod passed away in 6 BCE, and following his death, Masada fell in importance. The number of people stationed at Masada was reduced dramatically, and only a small Roman garrison remained in place. Just over 70 years later, in 66 CE, the Jewish rebels, rising up against the Roman occupation, arrived to Masada from Jerusalem. They overpowered the small Roman garrison and seized control of Masada. Masada became both the base of operations and the home for this group of rebels and their families for the next 7 years. Eschewing the opulence that had been left behind by Herod and refusing to partake of the luxury left behind by the Romans, the rebels lived a simple existence, living in what had been storerooms rather than the beautiful rooms of the palaces. In the archaeological excavations of the 1960s, Yigael Yadin found here in this room ostraka or clay shards with names inscribed upon them. For Yadin, this was to give crucial confirmation of what took place here at the final moments of the siege of Masada. Find out more in part 3 of the tour.